Hello and welcome to today's program. Here at the Korea Society in Midtown Manhattan, Forget Me Not, the impact of North Korean human rights abuses on families worldwide. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tom Byrne. I'm the president and CEO of the Korea Society. Today's program explores the personal consequences of North Korean human rights violations. Too often, human rights issues seem abstract and far away. But the testimonies you will hear and the living room reproduction displayed on our stage tonight will cast the tragedy of separated families in a relatable, empathetic light. North Korean human rights have long been a program priority here at the Korea Society. Early this year, we had the honor of hosting Ambassador Julie Turner to discuss the legacy of the landmark Human Rights Council report of the Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in North Korea, and to hear about the good work that her office and others around the world are engaged in. We're delighted to welcome Ambassador Turner back tonight to host this evening's program. In addition to Ambassador Turner, we are honored to welcome Assistant Secretary Daphne Rand, Republic of Korea Foreign Minister Tae-yul, and Luxembourg Deputy Prime Minister Xavier Bettel. Thank you for joining us. We're delighted to collaborate with Envoy and a global coalition of human rights organizations. Indeed, the international nature of the partnership that produced tonight's program is a reflection of the global coalition endeavoring to bring positive changes to the untold thousands suffering under the cruel oppression of North Korea's government. The topic of human rights can feel bleak, but when I look around this room, I feel hope. I see individuals, civil society organizations, and government officials who are dedicated to trying to make life better for ordinary North Koreans. Ambassador Turner, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this important event. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Korea Society, to Tom, to Jonathan, and the rest of the team here who have done so much to pull this event together today, as well as to our panelists and to the government of the Republic of Korea and the government of Luxembourg for co-hosting today's event. Before we get started with our panel, I would like to invite Foreign Minister Cho up to deliver some keynote remarks.
Thank you for inviting me to this important event. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to begin by thanking the like-minded partners and the NGOs for organizing this meaningful event on North Korean human rights situation during the high-level week of UN General Assembly, a fitting backdrop to an issue that urgently demands the attention of the international community. For the phrase "forget me not" is a desperate plea from the victims of human rights abuses by North Korean regime. This human voice reminds of us the person, the me, behind the faceless numbers and statistics and their experiences of harrowing pain and suffering. That they ask for so little but to be remembered is a gut-wrenching charge on the international community's oblivion and should serve as a rallying cry to act and bring swift remedy. No. Tonight, we reaffirm our commitment to heed their call. We remember the abductees, detainees, unrepatriated prisoners of war, North Korean defectors repatriated forcibly, as well as separate families on both sides of the Korean peninsula who long for reunions that never come. Further, we acknowledge the sacrifice and the courage of the families who are advocating for their loved ones detained in North Korea, while being constantly kept in the dark about the victims' fate and whereabouts. In this regard, I would like to recognize the presence of the family members of Kim Jong-un, Son Dong-sik, Kim Chol-ok, Lee Sang-moon, and Lee Eun-hee, as well as Rumiko Matsumoto, all the names that we should not forget. I also recognize the plight of Kim Guk-ki and Choi Chun-gil, whose forced detention in North Korea will soon be marking a decade. My government reaffirms its unwavering commitment to cooperating with other countries and civil society to do everything we can to address their suffering. Ladies and gentlemen, forget-me-not is also the silent cry from our compatriots in North Korea who have no voice. As we mark the 10th anniversary of the landmark COI report on human rights situation in North Korea this year, which had found the gravity, scale, and nature of human rights violations by North Korea to be unparalleled in the contemporary world, it is much to our dismay that the human rights situation in North Korea has taken a turn for the worse. Recently, Pyongyang has even introduced new laws to enforce draconian measures against the influx of information and culture from the outside world. The regime, in a truly Orwellian fashion, is doing everything it can do to avoid the worst nightmare, its people opening their eyes to the outside world. However, as I stated almost a decade ago at the UN Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva to discuss the COI report, one cannot veil the sky with the palm of a hand. Meanwhile, North Koreans who make the life or death decisions to flee these oppressive conditions often face the risk of exploitation, human trafficking and abuse during their transit, as well as the risk of forceful repatriation and harsh punishments, leaving them trapped between the danger of remaining and the perils of escaping. My government reiterates its call for the states to respect the principle of non-refoulement in their treatment of North Korean defectors. Most importantly, my government strongly urges North Korea to take prompt actions to bring about fundamental changes in its dire human rights situation. As the designation of July 14th as North Korean Defectors Day this year shows, my government will also seek to fully embrace the defectors, whom we call the prelude to reunification. Ladies and gentlemen, for over 70 years, it is as if Koreans have been subjected to a cruel and immoral social experiment to see what the presence or absence of freedom, human rights, and democracy can do to people. One nation divided into two, one taking the path of freedom and democracy, whereas the other, the path of stifling dictatorship. This experiment must stop. Placing universal values at the heart of our agenda, North Korean human rights situation is among the issues of the highest priority for my government. Recently, President Yoon Suk-yeol unveiled the August 15 Unification Doctrine, a vision and strategy to achieve a unified Korean peninsula that is free, peaceful, and prosperous. In pursuit of the doctrine, we will take a multifaceted approach to substantially improve the human rights situation in North Korea and spare no efforts in promoting freedom and human rights of each and every Korean. On the multilateral stage, as the President of the United Nations Security Council last June, the Korean government presided over a briefing on the human rights situation in North Korea. It provided the much-needed opportunity to highlight the linkage between North Korea's human rights abuses and its nuclear and missile capabilities, which are the two sides of the same coin. We know that the North Korean regime is only able to develop its weapons of mass destruction with impunity at home by repressing the rights of its people and diverting scarce resources from its starving populace. In the upcoming Universal Periodic Review of North Korea in November, my government will strongly voice its concern not only over the human rights situation in North Korea, but also for the issues of abductees, detainees, and repatriated prisoners of war, North Korean defectors forcibly repatriated, as well as separate families whose suffering represents a matter of pressing human rights and humanitarian concern. For the separate families, the lack of closure over the last 7 decades and the agony of not knowing whether their beloved ones are even alive are compounded by an advancing age, turning their plight into a race against the time that requires the urgent attention of the international community. Last year, remembering the ardent wish of the separate families to be reunited, the Korean government introduced the Separate Families Day 2 days prior to Chuseok, the Korean Thanksgiving Day. On this year's Separate Families Day just a week ago, President Yoon reiterated that the issue of separate families is one of the most urgent issues that we must tackle. Ladies and gentlemen, let us not forget the anguish and sorrow of the families who lost their own flesh and blood to the unprecedented brutality of North Korean regime. This is not just their story, it is the story of our fathers and mothers, our brothers and sisters, and our neighbors. As you can see behind me, there is an exhibit showcasing the houses of the North and the South. While the wall between the two sets represents our cold reality of division, the exhibit will offer an opportunity to get the glimpse of the lives of our kings who are sorely missed. I hope that today's event will serve to shed light on the indescribable pain of the victims of human rights violations in North Korea and their families, and to demonstrate our unwavering support for the innocent people in the northern half of the Korean peninsula groaning under the yoke of tyranny. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Foreign Minister Cho, for those remarks. I'd like to next welcome the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor Assistant Secretary Daphne Rand to deliver remarks.
Good evening, and thank you to the Korea Society for hosting us today, and to the Coalition of Civil Society Groups for their support, to the Republic of Korea and Luxembourg for co-hosting, and most especially, thank you to each of our panelists for coming. I also want to acknowledge the other members of the Korean American divided families who are here today in our audience or watching online. It has been almost 11 years since Kim Jong-un was detained in North Korea. More precisely, it has been 4,005 days. He has missed countless holidays, birthdays, and family celebrations while unjustly detained. And his brother, Kim Jong-sam, who we will hear from, continues to worry about his brother's health without a channel to communicate or simply even to verify his well-being. Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-sam are not alone. 5 other South Korean families are similarly awaiting the return of their loved ones detained in the DPRK. And 13 Japanese families, including that of excuse me if I'm mispronouncing Masumoto's name, are still awaiting answers regarding their loved ones who were abducted from Japan. More than 516 South Koreans have been abducted since the Korean War, including Kim Gang-nam, Shea Sang-min, Lee Min-gyoy, Lee Min-yang-oh, Hong Gun-pyo, just teenagers at the time of their abduction. Chae Wan-mo, who is among the hundreds of fishermen abducted, and Hwang Hwan, a father who was abducted aboard the hijacked Korean Airlines flight in 1969. Nearly 100,000 civilians were abducted from the South by the North during the war. There have been reports throughout the 1970s, women from Lebanon, Thailand, China, Singapore, Romania, and France that were abducted by the DPRK. The issue of abductions, enforced disappearances, and divided families is truly a global issue. Their families are still hoping for the day that they will be able to reunite with their loved ones. Countless Korean families around the world, including here in the United States, remain separated as a result of the war. We will hear tonight from Shahee Stanfield about the impact of the Korean War had on her family and her tireless advocacy to help reunite not only her family, but the families of thousands of Korean Americans. Tens of thousands of prisoners of war remain unaccounted for at the time of the armistice. Hundreds of South Korean POWs are believed to be still alive and are being held by the DPRK. Just shy of 7,500 Americans remain unaccounted for. Across all of these groups, time is running out. Many of the affected families are aging, and the vast majority of Korean American divided family members are in their late 80s and 90s. There is a sense of urgency to provide closure for these individuals. The grief of decades-long separation and searching is unimaginable. The tragedy of mothers being separated from their children and brothers being separated from their sisters is exacerbated by the DPRK's government's defiance of international human rights law. In 2014, the UN Commission of Inquiry on the Human Rights Situation in the DPRK found that in violation of the right to family protected by Article 20, found that the DPRK was in violation of the right to family protected by Article 23 of the ICCPR, which is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Entire families have been separated between the North and the South, and they've had no opportunity to see each other, exchange letters, or speak over the telephone for decades. The DPRK's repressive policies continue to keep families apart, and they have done so for far too long. Even today, a new wave of family separations has formed as North Koreans seek to flee repression and abuses. North Korean escapees are vulnerable to trafficking and exploitation, particularly in the PRC and in Russia, where they are at risk of forced repatriation. Kim Ki-yeol-lee's experience, which we will hear, reinforces the need for countries, including the PRC and Russia, to provide broader protections to North Korean refugees. Her sister, Kim Chul-ok, was among a group of 600 North Koreans who were reportedly forcibly repatriated to North Korea in October 2023. Joseph Kim, one of the first North Korean escapees to arrive here in the United States in 2007, arrived as an unaccompanied minor. To this day, he continues to search for his older sister, who is believed to have been sold into marriage in the PRC. The United States, along with our partners and allies, is committed to promoting the welfare of the North Korean people. Today, the Republic of Korea remains our stalwart ally, and together, trilaterally with Japan, we remain committed to strengthening cooperation to promote respect for human rights in the DPRK, to reaffirm a shared commitment to the immediate resolution of divided families and abductees, detainees, and unrepatriated prisoners of war. We know that time is running out for many family members to reunite with their loved ones, to receive answers, and to find closure. We feel the urgency. And we are committed to getting back to the negotiating table with the DPRK without preconditions. We continue to highlight the issue of family separations, including at the UN Human Rights Council and the UN Security Council, and through events like these on the margins of General Assembly meetings. In the June UN Security Council open briefing on North Korean human rights, the UN High Commissioner and governments, including the US, noted the impact of the regime's policies on families and the decades-long separation so many have had to endure. We're committed at the State Department and on behalf of the entire US government to continue to use the full range of tools to urge the DPRK back to the negotiating table and to continue to urge the DPRK to consider the humanitarian aspect of family reunions. And on a personal note, I just want to acknowledge Ambassador Turner is one of the United States' biggest treasures, a diplomat with so much experience. The fact that the US Congress has asked her to serve in this role shows all of you how seriously we take this issue. In conclusion, we will continue to raise international awareness of the global impact of the DPRK's policies that leave family members around the world with unanswered questions and impact people of all nationalities. With so much, thank you for being here, for sharing your stories and continuing to work with us. Thank you all.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary Rand, for those remarks. I think we're going to transition to our panel now, and I want to start by just saying that over the course of my time in my position, I've had the opportunity to meet with divided family members, abductees, detainees, unrepatriated POW families all over the world. And it's an honor to be here today with all of our special guests, both on the panel and in the audience. It is heartbreaking to hear of the suffering and the agony that these families have had to experience over the years, wondering, questioning what happened to their loved one, what their loved one may be doing today as we're sitting here, what conditions they may be experiencing in North Korea. And so, as both the foreign minister said and Assistant Secretary Rand said, we're committed to getting back to the negotiating table, to pushing for reunification of families as quickly as possible. I'd like to introduce or give a quick introduction of everyone on our panel, and then each of the panelists will share a few minutes worth of remarks, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience to the panel. First, our first panelist is Ms. Son Myung-hwa. She is a North Korean escapee herself and the daughter of Son Dong-sik, a South Korean POW who was forced to work in North Korean coal mines and a logging factory for decades before he died of cancer. She escaped to South Korea in 2005 and spent 8 years attempting to get her father's remains. Ultimately, she traveled to China to meet a North Korean broker who promised to transport them. And on July 4th, 2015, she was able to bury her father in a South Korean cemetery. Our next panelist will be Ms. Kim Kyu-lee, who is also a North Korean escapee who escaped China in 1997 and currently lives in the United Kingdom. Her sister, Cholok, was only 15 when she fled North Korea in 1998 and was sold by human traffickers to a Chinese man, 30 years her senior. She lived with him for 25 years, bearing him a daughter. And in 2023, she tried to flee to South Korea, but was captured by Chinese police and was among the reported 600 North Korean escapees who were forcibly repatriated to North Korea in October of last year. The next panelist is Tae-yul Matsumoto, who is the brother of Rumiko Matsumoto, a Japanese citizen who was abducted by North Korea. Rumiko was kidnapped in 1978 from a beach in Japan. The next panelist is Mr. Kim Jong-sam. He's the brother of Kim Jong-uk, a South Korean missionary who was arrested after he entered North Korea with religious materials in October of 2013. He was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment in a North Korean labor camp. And as Assistant Secretary Rand mentioned, just last week hit the 4,000 days in detention mark, which is far too long for the crime that he is accused of. And our final panelist is Ms. Cha-hee Lee Stanfield, who was separated from her father and brother following the start of the Korean War. She was 4 years old when she left Manchuria for South Korea with her mother and most of her siblings in 1945, thinking her father and one of her brothers would stay behind to farm their land only for a few weeks, but she has not seen them since. Thank you again to all of our panelists, and I will hand it over to Ms. Song.
네, 안녕하세요. 제 이름은 손명아입니다. 우리 아버지 군번은 K1123444. 손동식 이등 중사로서 1984년 북한에서 국군 포로로 돌아가셨습니다. 저는 국군 포로의 딸로서 2005년 탈북해서 한국에 왔고 2013년 아버지 유언대로 아버지 유해를 한국에 모셔왔지만 그 대가로 오빠와 막내 동생이 정치범 수용소로 보내졌습니다. 이러한 가족사 때문에 현재 한국에서 6.25 국군포로 가족회 대표로서 국군포로 진상규명위 설치, 국군포로 문제 전담기구와 국군포로를 위한 특별 훈장 시설을 캠페인하고 있습니다. 우리 아버지는 1925년 남해안 김해에서 태어났습니다. 1950년 북한이 쳐들어오자 아버지께서는 입대하셨고 1951년 혈리전투에서 북한군의 포로가 되었습니다. 1953년 7월 정전협정이 체결되었고 이에 따른 모든 전쟁 포로는 송환하기로 되어 있었습니다. 그러나 북한은 최소 5만 명의 국군 포로 송환을 거부하였습니다. 아버지는 그 중 한 분이었습니다. 그렇게 아버지는 남한의 부모 형제와 영영 생이별을 하게 되었습니다. 대부분의 국군 포로는 북중 국경지대 탄광으로 보내졌습니다. 그래서 저도 1962년 북한 제북단 무산군에서 태어났습니다. 우리는 늘 감시받았고 교육, 직업, 혼인 등에서 차별을 받았습니다. 아버지처럼 저와 우리 남매들도 탄광에 배치되었습니다. 1984년 아버지는 평생 탄광에서 고된 노동에 시달리다가 돌아가시면서 당시 유해를 남한에 묻어달라는 유언을 저에게 남겼습니다. 우리는 아버지 마지막 소원을 잊을 수 없었습니다. 1994년 이후 국군포로 80명과 국군포로 가족 430명이 목숨을 건 탈북을 하여 한국에 왔습니다. 한만택, 정상훈 어르신처럼 중국 당국에 붙잡혀 북송된 국군포로와 국군포로 가족들도 적지 않습니다. 이들은 처형되거나 정치범 수용소로 보내졌습니다. 다행히 저는 2005년 탈북에 성공을 하여 한국에 왔습니다. 2013년 저는 북한에 남아있던 가족들이 도움으로 아버지가 돌아가신 지 29년 만에 아버지 유해를 남한에 모셔오고 묻어두리게 되었습니다. 이렇게 우리 아버지는 사후 남한의 가족들과 재할 수 있었습니다. 그러나 북한 당국은 아버지 유해를 모셔오는 것을 도왔다는 이유로 제 오빠 손충건, 막내 동생 손영금, 조카 박명호 3명을 정치범 수용소로 보내버렸습니다. 우리 아버지 가족 결합과 우리 오빠 동생 조카의 가족 강제 분리와 맞바꾼 것이었습니다. 지금도 우리 아버지 이남 사녀 중 저를 포함한 3명은 한국에 있고 정치범 수용소로 보내진 2명을 포함한 3명은 북한에 남아 있습니다. 국군포로 자녀 중에는 아버지 유해 중 절반만 한국으로 모셔오고 나머지 절반은 북한에 남겨진 사례도 있습니다. 왜 북한은 우리 국군포로 가족을 이렇게 산산조각으로 내어버리는 것입니까? 작년 12월 채택된 유엔 총회 북한 인권 결의는 북한의 모든 납북자, 옥류자, 미송환 국군포로를 즉각 송환하고 이산가족 간의 상설 정기 상봉과 연락을 하여 허용할 것을 촉구하였습니다. 또한 북송되어 고문, 성폭행이나 사형에 처해 있는 난민과 망명, 신청자의 상황에 대해서도 심각한 우려를 표시하고 있습니다. 북한은 이러한 국제사회의 목소리가 들리지 않습니까? 여기 모여 계신 다른 분들과 북한에 호소합니다. 이제 우리 가족들을 그만 갈라 놓으십시오. 감사합니다.
I'm sorry. I think I need a lot of them.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. Like many of you, I'm a daughter, a mother, a wife, and sister. But unlike you, I cannot see or meet my beloved sister. My little sister, Kim Tae-yul, was arrested by the Chinese authorities and deported to North Korea in October last year. I have not heard anything about Tae-yul for almost a year now. Her story, our family's story, is also a story of crew. Forced separation of families suffered by so many North Korean refugees in China. I grew up in a family of 6 in North Korea. At the height of the famine in 1995, we lost our mother. just 17, I was left to care for my father and Tae-yul, 6 years apart from me. Every day I walked 30 miles to sell bread. In the winter, I crossed the frozen river to China, beg or work for money. Still, it became difficult to support my family. After in 1997, I made the hard, balancing decision to leave North Korea. I was sold to a Chinese man, but he was kind. Within a year, I was able to send money, clothes, and food to my family back home. But in 1998, I received a call from the broker saying that he has a Tae-yul in China. He said he would free her if I paid him. But I reached him hours later. He had already sold Tae-yul. Then only 14 to Chinese men 30 years older than her, and had washed his hands. I lost contact with Tae-yul for next 23 years. But I never gave up my hope of finding her. Finally, in 2020, we connected, we cried and talked for hours over the phone. Tae-yul was still my little sister. But much has changed over the years. She had forgotten her Korean, so he spoke in Mandarin. I learned that I was an aunt to a nieceborn when Tae-yul was only 15. In early 2023, Tae-yul barely survived COVID, but she could not go to the hospital. This was because of China's policy of forcing North Korean refugees to live invisible as illegal migrants at home or face deportation to North Korea, even though South Korea and other countries have offered to accept them. Tae-yul decided that she had to flee China. But just 2 hours after escaping from her village, she was arrested by the police. For 6 organizing months, I desperately sought ways to set her free. Then on October 9, 2023, China forcibly repatriated over 500 North Korean refugees, including Tae-yul. Why condemn so many innocent people to torture, sexual violence, forced abortions, political prison camps, and executions in North Korea? Why break the heart of so many families by tearing them apart? I only wish to see my little sister free, safe, and reunite with her family. My fellow North Korean escapees wish the same for their loved ones. I'm sure that the families of abductees, detainees, and unrepatriated POWs and other families forcibly separated by North Korea that are here today feel the same. I ask governments to ask North Korea to clarify the fate and whereabouts my sister and other repatriated North Korean refugees at the UPR in November. To end this atrocity, I ask the international community to hold Kim Jong-un and others accountable for their crimes against humanity. Thank you.
Eh、本日はお招きいただき感謝申し上げます。1978年8月12日、私の姉、ルミ子は、日本の南部に位置する鹿児島県の吹上という海岸から、友人の市川さんと一緒に忽然といなくなりました。それから10日間ほど、 市川さんの車が見つかった付近を警察、消防団等々が捜索をしましたが、何の手がかりも得られず、家族にとっては何が起こっているのか理解できない事態となってしまいました。1979年の年末、北朝鮮の工作員によって拉致された可能性という話になりました。しかし、日本で普通に暮らし、北朝鮮のことなど一切関心がない姉が、なぜそのような拉致事件に巻き込まれるのかという疑問もあり、半信半疑でした。ここまで事実が判明したのであれば、日本という国が姉を助けてくれるという思いもあり、家族が騒ぐことにより姉に危害が加わりかねないという恐怖もあり、国による救出を待つしかありませんでした。1997年、新たに13歳で拉致された横田めぐみさんの存在が脱北者の証言から明らかになり、日本国民の間で大きな関心事となりました。そして日本全国に散在する拉致被害者の家族が集まり、一緒に政府への申し入れなど救出に向けた活動が始まりました。2002年9月、平壌で開かれた日朝首脳会談で、ついに北朝鮮が日本人拉致を認めることとなりました。そして北朝鮮の報告として日本側が求めていた13人の安否情報がもたらされます。5人生存、8人死亡というむごい結果でした。増本留美子もすでに死亡したということでありました。2002年9月、平壌で開かれた、なんだこれ。失礼。これだいぶ間違えてるな。しかし、それまで何度も嘘をついてきた北朝鮮のずさんな報告を信じることはできずに、それからも被害者の救出運動を続けてきました。そして22年過ぎた現在も、北朝鮮の不誠実に対応により、全面解決に至っておりません。私はただ、半世紀近く会えずにいる姉、ルミ子に会いたいだけです。半世紀にわたり、北朝鮮政府の非道を訴えている脱北者の活動がありながら、世界はそれを無視するような姿勢が続き、北朝鮮人民の苦しみや拉致被害者の悲しみを取り除くことはありません。私は不思議でなりません。独裁者が支配する地域で行われている人道に対する罪を見過ごし続けて何もしないどころか、幇助する国すらある。いかなる理由でも北朝鮮の非道を見過ごすことは絶対にあってはならないと思います。皆さん、一緒に声を上げ、人民や拉致被害者の苦しみを排除することに協力していただきたい。ありがとうございました。
안녕하세요. 저는 선교를 하던 동생이 북한에 11년째 억류 중이며 현재 생사를 확인 못해 애타고 있는 김정욱 목사의 형 김정삼입니다. 저는 몇 년 전 하나님의 은혜로 심장마비로 죽을 고비를 넘겼고 지금도 심장약을 먹으며 만약을 대비해 니트로글리세린 캡슐을 들어있는 팔찌를 차고 다닙니다. 그럼에도 제가 모든 것을 내려놓고 지구 반대편 뉴욕에서 유엔 총회 개회에 맞춰 열리는 오늘 행사에 참석한 것은 오직 동생과 북에 억류된 다른 선교사님들의 생사 확인과 송환을 위해 여러분께 도움을 호소합니다. 이 자리에 모인 한국과 일본의 납북자, 억류자, 국군포로 가족은 모두 마음속으로 같은 생각을 하고 있으리라 믿습니다. 중국에서 북송된 가족들을 둔 탈북자, 북한의 가족을 둔 재미교포 분도 마찬가지입니다. 제 생각과 기도가 여러분 모두와 함께 합니다. 윤혁이 오기 전 순천에서 북한에 억류 중인 김국기 선교사 사모님과 최충길 선교사님 아들과 함께 만나 위로하며 함께 예배를 드릴 기회가 있었습니다. 이들이 사랑하는 가족의 품으로 속히 돌아오기를 간절한 마음으로 기도하였습니다. 정욱이는 저보다 4살이 어립니다. 그런데도 정욱이는 어렸을 때부터 워낙 씩씩하고 성깔이 있어서 저와 싸움박질도 했습니다. 정욱이는 강한 신념을 가진 목사가 되었고 굶어 죽어가는 북한 주민을 내가 사랑하는데 너가 사랑하지 않느냐는 하나님의 부름에 순종으로 화답하였습니다. 김정은 목사는 압록강을 건너면 바로 북한인 중국 단동에서 초췌한 몰골의 북한 사람들을 교회로 초대하여 사랑으로 회복시키고 복음을 전하였습니다. 그러나 중국 경찰이 교회를 급습하여 그가 보살피던 북한 사람들을 체포하여 북성해 버리자 김정우 선교사는 이들의 안위를 걱정하였습니다. 결국 그는 북한 국가 보위성의 게임에 넘어가 북한에 억류되었습니다. 예레미야 29장 11절에 하나님은 너희를 향한 나의 생각을 내가 아나니 평안이요 재앙이 아니라 너희에게 미래와 희망을 주는 것이니라 말씀하십니다. 그러나 북한은 하나님의 생각을 악으로 규정하고 하나님의 사랑을 실천하는 것일 뿐인 선교사 3분의 생사 확인도 해주지 않고 있습니다. 북한도 미래와 희망을 받아들이고 북한 사람들이 평화와 인권을 누릴 날이 오기를 기도합니다. 11월 7일 북한 UPR이 있다고 들었습니다. 김정욱, 김국기, 최충길 선교사님들을 포함한 모든 납북자, 억류자, 국군포로에 대한 생사 확인과 함께 이들의 즉각 석방과 송원을 북한에 촉구할 것을 부탁드립니다. 울진에서 정욱이가 중학교 다닐 때 정욱이와 정욱이 동생들이 늦겨울에 저수지를 덮은 빙판이 깨지면서 저수지에 빠진 적이 있습니다. 그때는 휴대폰 같은 게 없었기 때문에 정욱이가 살았는지 또 죽었는지 알기까지 오래 걸렸습니다. 저는 교회를 다니기 전이었음에도 정욱이가 무사히 돌아오기를 열심히 간절하게 기도하였습니다. 하나님께서 제 기도를 들어주신 것인지 정욱이는 살아 돌아왔습니다. 그때와 같이 저는 정욱이와 북한에 의해 가족과 강제로 분리된 다른 분들이 사랑하는 이들과 재회할 수 있기를 기도합니다. 감사합니다.
I was born in a deep mountain village in Manchuria, China, which was a Korean guerrilla hideout when Korea was under the Japanese rule. My father owned vast lands, including extensive agricultural land, and he provided the food and the weapons to the Korean guerrillas fighting for independence for Korea. When World War II was over, my family decided to return to the hometown, Daegu City, located in the southern part of South Korea. And my mother, my siblings, and I left for South Korea. But my father and one of my brothers, Eun-hee, stayed in Manchuria to wrap up the business. They're going to join us in a few weeks. But shortly after we left, the border between China and North Korea was closed, and they became trapped in Manchuria. In 1968, I came to the United States to study at Indiana University, and my family also moved to the States, settling in Illinois. In 1988, I went to Manchuria to find out what happened to my father, what had happened to my father and brother, and found out that they had moved to North Korea in the end of 1949. In 1992, my nephew, who was a minister, visited North Pyongyang with a group of ministers. During the visit, he mentioned my father's name to an official. A few days later, when he returned to his hotel, Ung-hee and his son were waiting for him. From this reunion, we learned what had happened to by then my father had passed away. And we also learned that what had happened, why they didn't come home. Shortly after they arrived in North Korea, the Korean War broke out, and Ung-hee was conscripted into the North Korean army and fought for North Korea, while my 3 other brothers fought for South Korea. I'm sorry. And one of them was killed. When the war was over and Ung-hee returned home, this time the 38th parallel was drawn. And this time they became trapped in North Korea. At the age of 54, my father started running marathons, and later he became well known as an athlete, educator, and inspirational speaker. And they made a movie about him, and I have a copy of the movie. In 1989, I transferred my job to the Albany Park Library, which was located in the heart of the Korean community in Chicago. Within several years, I developed an extensive Korean collections, and the library was crowded with Koreans from all of the city and the suburbs. And a lot of them were divided family members. In March 2000, I went to see Congressman Mark Kirk to discuss the plight of the divided families. Since then, several resolutions have been passed in the House, in Congress. And Congressman Mark Kirk passed 2 bills. One was signed by President George W. Bush in January 2008. The other by President Obama in December 2009. Thanks to Congresswomen Young Kim and Grace Meng, the 3rd bill was signed by President Biden on January 9th, 2023. Ambassador Julie Turner's registration bill was passed in the House last June, and it's in the Senate now. The problem is that most divided family members have passed away. The remaining survivors are in their late 80s and 90s, and time is running out for us. Please help us to reunite our family members in North Korea. Thank you.
Thank you to all of the panelists for sharing your stories. I know these are deeply personal and emotional stories, and you've just been very vulnerable in front of all of us. And I just want to applaud your courage and thank you for your efforts to continue to shine a spotlight on how North Korea's policies have impacted families around the world. Can we just give them all another round of applause? Before we open up to questions to the panel, I'd like to take a minute to introduce the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of Luxembourg. The Deputy Prime Minister is here to deliver remarks, and so we're going to give him the floor for now, and then we'll jump back to the panel.
Thank you so much, but I just have an invitation from President Biden at 5:30, so that's the reason why I am not able to stay till the end. But for me, it was important to be here. The first thing is I come from a small country on the map, Luxembourg. But Luxembourg was one of the country fighting on the side of democratic defenders. And I've just been to Seoul with one of my last surviving veterans. And believe me, for them, they will never forget how the Koreans honored them since they fought. 2 Luxembourgish young guys died, and most of them didn't know where Korea was. Like you, most of you didn't know where Luxembourg was, but it was because they wanted to fight after Second World War. And to realize that still now, in 2024, it is important to remind of consequences of a non-democratic neighbor. I just want to remind that in Europe too, we had what we called the Iron Curtain, that families were divided from one day to another. But this curtain disappeared. We had reunification. We were able to live together. And listening to all 5 of you, I understand the emotions that you have. And believe me, no one in this room had not the same emotions listening to your stories. Imagining that for me as Luxembourger, from one day to another, my brother, my sister, my mother, my son might disappear because I have an unpredictable, dangerous neighbor is a nightmare, And thank you to organizing this together, because the worst thing would be to forget the victims and their family, because not to know what's happening, not to know if even some people are still alive or not, is the worst situation you can have as a mom or as a father. So I just wanted to tell you that we will continue being on the side of the people who want to fight for democratic values, that you honor your family members by speaking about them, and please do it, continue. Because, and I don't want to be misunderstood, being with so many Koreans here, for us Europeans, Korea War was called the Forgotten War, because very often we just know the First and the Second World War. We forgot that after the Second World War, we had the Korean War. We have to fight for memories, but we have to fight also for your right to live in a free country where people have not to be scared about a behavior of a dangerous neighbor, of a kidnapping even in other countries, and an unacceptable behavior. And we will be on your side, and thank you so much for inviting us to be able just to take the floor. As I was Prime Minister for 10 years, and now Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we should just learn from the errors with it also. And I just can tell you, I will do my speech on Saturday at the UN. The world is crazy for the moment too. We have over 65 conflicts for the moment, and 50 are non-conflicts yet, but maybe a conflict tomorrow. And we have to do everything that my generation and the next generation are able to live like I grew up, in peace and tranquility. It's a duty of us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those remarks. And really, I think we say foot stomp the piece about not forgetting, and that all of you saying the names of your loved ones up here is really a way to honor them. And so we will continue to say their names. I hope you continue to say their names, and we'll continue to work to make sure that these individuals aren't forgotten. I'd like to open up the floor to questions to the panelists or other interventions. If I don't see anyone raising hands, then I will start, but I see somebody in the back already has a hand up. Go ahead.
안녕하세요. VOA 기자 김선명입니다. 김정삼 선생님한테 여쭙겠습니다. 그 유엔 총회 기간에 이런 자리가 마련됐는데 개인적으로 어떻게 생각하시는지, 두 번째는 최근에 미국 정부의 그 납북자에 대한 관심이 증가하고 있다고 생각하시는지 그것 좀 대답을 부탁드리겠습니다.
예, 감사드립니다. 제가 여기까지 오는 것은 그만큼 유엔 인권위원회가 열리는 그 기간이 대단히 중요하다고 생각합니다. 또 많은 전 세계 국가들이 그 유엔 인권위원회에 또 집중이 되고 있고 관심을 갖고 있다고 봅니다. 거기에 대해서 저 또한 이 유엔 인권위원회의 힘을 얻어서 또 이렇게 여기까지 와서 또 이렇게 이제 함께 호소할 수 있도록 해주심에 너무 감사드립니다. 그리고 미국 국무부에서 지난 4.1에 대해서 김정욱 선교사가 응유되어 있는데 국무부 대변인의 성명을 해주셔서 또 너무 감사드리고요. 제게는 또 큰 힘이 되었다는 부분을 말씀드리고 또 그와 함께 오늘 이 자리에 또 그 힘이 같이 이렇게 연결되어서 더 크게 나타나고 있다고 저는 감히 말씀드리고 싶습니다. 그 부분에 대해서 오늘 이 자리에 또 함께 하신 분들과 함께 진심으로 감사드립니다.
We're going to do consecutive translation for this, so if I can ask the panelists to also put little breaks in for the sake of our translators, but also for people asking questions.
Thank you so much for your comments. I think the reason that one of the reasons that I can be here today is because the UN Human Rights Commission is being held at this moment. And this is an opportunity for countries around the world to take interest and focus on this very important issue. And I think that the reason I'm able to be here today is also because of such interest. And I would like to take this opportunity to appeal with all of you and with the UN to take urgency on this issue. I also understand the U.S. State Department had issued a statement pertaining to my brother, missionary Kim Jong-uk, and that has also been a very important source of strength and encouragement for me as well. And the fact that all of you are here today is also a very important source of strength for me. And I would like to thank you once again for all of your support and for your attendance. Thank you.
Other questions? I thought I saw somebody else's hand up. There we go. Go ahead. She's coming.
Should I speak my fluent Korean or in English?
Whichever is more comfortable for you.
Okay, I will speak in English to save your job, okay?
Your English will be simultaneous interpreted.
Okay,
so.
yeah. My question to Ms. Lee, in your case, in my case, it's very similar. I think you and I spoke each other over the phone, but I'm meeting you. I'm Esther Kim. Okay, you were born in Manchuria.
Yes.
I was born in North Pyongyang province.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my family being a big landowner, so because of Kim Il-sung, the land reformation in cooperation with USSR at that time, so my family was the first victim of that Pyeongdong County that purged. The used to be the sharecropper, came to my family's house and told my parents, leave this house, leaving everything here. Just you carry the things that you can carry in 48 hours. But at that time, fortunately, but unfortunately, as a little baby, sick with measles, my mother, very strong person, and holding me in her arms. Okay, General Kim Il-sung, come, and then you can arrest me. But I cannot move with this sick, the spreadable disease. But my mother was a gentle person to the sharecroppers, and then she said, okay, Mrs. Chung, I will give you 1 month. So thanks to that, my family remained 1 month, and then were able to say goodbyes to my married sisters. By the way, I'm the number 11 of the 11 children. Okay, so some of the brothers and sisters already married, living in different regions. They could not come. And then my first brother, number 1 brother, was in Seoul working for the government. So just thinking about him, my parents and unmarried children, escaped, just pretending as a very poor farmer. And of course, around Jeju area, my family had to, hire the guide. So we just crossed the Yellow Sea that the tide is low, and my sister carried me on her back. And then she passed away last year. So I'm the only one in my generation to tell the story. Okay, so luckily, I came to United States like you in 1968 as a graduate student. So my mother's wish, in heaven said, okay, I wish Korea be, reunited as soon as possible. But I know in my lifetime that cannot be accomplished. Too. So when someday, I am not young, but 1 year shy of being 80. And someday if I go to heaven, so I like to tell my mother, Mom, at least I did this. And also as I speak, as you said, Myung-ha, that one of my niece is one of those who had been forcibly repatriated to North Korea on October 9th. Chinese government was very, very sneaky. And they waited until the Guangzhou Asian Game is over, and then that night through Sinuju, Dandong, that Freedom Bridge, forcefully repatriated, because my niece, through the help of missionary and other NGOs, was lucky enough to go to the Inner Mongolia, to come to South Korea. But at the Inner Mongolia, someplace I don't remember, that 6 people were captured, and then they were detained in the Inner Mongolian detention center. And then that group was one of those, one group that forcefully repatriated to North Korea. As I speak now, we don't know whether she is living or dead, or we don't know which prison camp or which the labor camp. So I ask you, everybody, and then also in this opportunity, I would like to personally thank Ambassador Turner and kindly inviting me. So thank you. And then Ambassador Turner and then State Department officials have been working very, very hard to rescue my niece. So everybody present here, please at least pray. I have been praying very, very hard. I believe in Jeremiah chapter 33 and verse 3, cry out to me. I will answer your prayers, and also you will see the big and mysterious things. So I believe that Bible verse. Thank you very much.
I think we have maybe time for one more question before we transition to the...
Thank you so much, meet everybody here. I'm old man here also. 저는 6.25 때 국민학교 8학년이었습니다. 그리고 사실은 제가 필라델피아에서 왔는데 지금 everyone escapee from cold, Korean War. Their age is over almost 90. They pass away every day right now.
That's right.
We're talking
You're
maybe too late. I'm talking about here. we like to help them people whatever we can, but time gone so fast. I don't know what we can do right now. Those families are still missing family at North Korea, family. I've been out there in North Korea once. I tried to contact them family there. Very, very difficult. They say, okay, I get you. But they are so much lying, I understand it. So we are very, very urgent situation right now. So what you can do, what you can help them people, I don't know. Please help. This government will be help. I just asking for deeply help. Separation family. Thank you.
Thank you, and I know we have other members of the Korean American community here sharing their thoughts and stories. Thank you for joining us. And again, I want to give a big thanks to our panelists. I hope that many of you will stick around for the reception, and I'm going to hand it over to Sean here in a second to talk a little bit about the exhibit. But the reception will also be a good opportunity to be able to have some more personal interactions with the panelists as well. But before we do that, let me introduce the president and CEO of Envoy, who is one of the leading civil society groups on the North Korean human rights issue and helped to coordinate today's event. And Sean is going to tell us about the People's Museum exhibit.
Thank you, Ambassador Turner. First, as we conclude today's panel, I wanted to start by thanking our co-hosts, the governments of the Republic of Korea, Luxembourg, and the United States for their strong commitment and support. I'd also like to express my deep gratitude to the 5 divided family members who traveled a great distance to bravely share their stories with us today. And finally, I'd like to extend a special thank you to the Korea Society for welcoming us into their space, and to our global coalition of 25 civil society partners who co-organize this event. Our global coalition, represented today here by Envoy's Transitional Justice Working Group, the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect, Human Rights Watch, and the Korean POW Family Association, is committed to pushing for stronger action at the UN to address the ongoing and worsening human rights situation in North Korea. Just a quick plug, as we approach the negotiations for the UNGA Third Committee resolution, we invite your delegation to engage with us and to support our platform for a more ambitious and impactful resolution this year. But it is now my honor to introduce our exhibit, the People's Museum of North Korea, which this year focuses on the story of divided families. Our exhibit aims to capture the personal impact of family separation through the recreation of 2 living rooms, one from South Korea and one from North Korea. These spaces are more than just rooms, they're symbols of different lives shaped on each side of the border and how families remember their loved ones across the divide. This year's exhibit allows us to experience the line between 2 worlds, with each room's ordinary objects telling stories of separation, including the stories that you heard today that span decades and continents. At heart, our exhibit is both a memorial and a call for justice. It reminds us that behind every headline are real people, parents, children, relatives, yearning to be reunited with their families and looking for closure. We welcome you now to join us for the reception. There's food and wine in the back here, Korean food, and we welcome you to walk around in our exhibit, which is now going to be set up, and really just look at all of the North Korean objects, touch the North Korean objects, read the stories, click the QR codes to read a little bit more about each of the stories, and really engage with this exhibit and also with our speakers here today. Thank you so much for coming, and please stay around for the exhibit. Thank you.